Recording in progress. So back to Donald. Donald, tell us how you got here. How did you find this particular channel? And we'll start there.
The journey is kind of long. I'll try to. I'll give you the cliff notes. I've always been spiritual. My mom kind of called me. I guess there was the big indigo child thing going on, and I always had like kind of astral projections and things like that in my early life, but I thought it was strange, and I was just kind of like, I'm just gonna put that off. I don't really want to think about that. I just want to be normal.
Where on the planet are you right now?
I am in, you mean like on Earth, like physically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm in Virginia.
Okay. And did you grow up there?
No, I grew up in Kentucky. Still the United States, but not here. Yeah.
Okay, back to you.
Yeah. So I kind of put everything off until one night I had this kind of lucid dream with my grandmother who had passed away, and I saw this Hindu goddess named Kali, and there was this symbol in the back behind her, and she kind of communicated to me, I guess telepathically, because I could hear her as if she was speaking, but she didn't say words. But anyway, she said something around the lines of "I'm insignificant," and for a long time I was very, very scared of that. And I kind of put that in the background, and then it's kind of like all these events kind of lead up to this moment, because like I had written a list of things that I wanted to accomplish in life. I accomplished them all, but I was still like unfulfilled, and I was trying to figure out why I was unfulfilled. And I was very deep into psychological techniques, so like reparenting and all kinds of stuff like this. And my mom was like, "Hey, get a journal, and write down, what you feel from a childhood experience, and then burn it." And I was like, "All right, cool." So I did that and a bunch of psychological techniques at the same time. And then it just felt like after like an hour or two of crying, I felt like everything had been washed away from me, and I felt light. I felt connected to everything. And then I felt this overwhelming love come from what felt like the middle of nowhere. And then I felt like I was unworthy of it, but the more I delved into it, the stronger it became. So
when was that? Do you mind if I ask?
It was actually when I was 33, and it was I keep forgetting my age. 4 years ago. All right. So it was 4 years ago. So that got me on this journey. So I went to like multiple churches, got baptized, was like trying to figure out what was going on. And another one of my grandmothers, who was very much into this stuff when I was a child, left behind a book for my mom, and my mom gave it to me, and it's called The Ascended Master Instruction. And I was reading it, and that made me purchase the rest of the books in the series. And then I looked up, Lumerians and things like this, and that kind of led me down to this path. So that's how I got here. Sorry, it's a little convoluted.
Well, every one of us has our own little convoluted story. You'll learn over time here. So that's definitely the Reader's Digest version, because every piece along the way had some extraordinary thing that deserves to be told in detail. We'll get to it. So hold the phone. Now that Lisa is here, Lisa, share a little bit more about you, because you're really the benchmark I've been using now lately. When the time for us and all the preparation for us to begin to focus on helping other people understand what these golden tie areas are, all that's been done. In fact, today I had taped a broadcast with a woman named Loren Gailey. If you know Loren, she has her own network called New Earth One, where she's been supporting people that train on a variety of spiritual and metaphysical topics. She came across me like last year, and I did some training sessions on the Ascension Handbook back in April on that platform. Then I did one about Earth's galactic history later, I think before the summer. So it's time now. And I just finished, I had exchanged with Maia, so I had permission to reproduce the Golden Taya on my website. So now under the Ascension Handbook, you can find that copy. And I just completed that yesterday. It took about 4 days to get it all laid out, but it's there for everybody to use. But I still would point everyone to listen to her, Maia, tell and narrate those stories on her YouTube channel and those 3 videos that she's got. Then we've got all the documentation to go back and really deep dive into. It's time for us to do that. So when I begin to tell people about that, and the brief amount of information, because we talk about the areas, that's when Lisa's story comes in. Oh my God. So let me tell you about the last person who thought that she was moved to Hawaii. So here is your chance to tell everybody else what that was.
Okay. Yeah, it's
and
wild
how rapidly it happened. I'm sorry.
It did happen fast. Yeah, it's funny how many people have mentioned Kauai. I know Vaneeta has, and Justin. I don't know if there was anybody else that mentioned it, but yeah, not just Hawaii, but actually the island of Kauai. So I was like, wow, there's definitely something there. And there is, I mean, the energy here is palpable. That divine feminine energy is, it's strong. And just even in the last, we moved here December 1st of last year. And just in this last year, I felt myself change so much in this last year. I mean, I know with the ascension energy, that's going to spur things up, but I think it's the island too. It's definitely being here that's doing it as well. And it's been great. It's unfolded beautifully. But just a short background on how we got here. My husband and I, at first it hit me more. I've always been the one to kind of push him along, kind of, give him, he doesn't move as fast as me with some things, but his wake up happened a little later, but we've always been on the same page pretty much. And it was 9 months before we actually moved here. We finally were like, we're going to do this. And don't get me wrong, we've done a lot of inner work on our own, like to get to the point we were. It's not like we were in the 3D matrix at that point or anything and just decided to move. I've known about the ascension happening for almost a decade. So my awakening happened in 2014. It was a massive involuntary awakening that I knew I better buckle up and go for the ride, because if I resisted, it was going to be painful. And I didn't resist. I let it go, but it was, the downloads were intense. At the time, I didn't know I was connecting to the Akashic records, but that's what it was. And I still, that's pretty heavy. That's a pretty heavy thing for me, is the downloads and the Akashic records linking that I'm able to do. My kids talk to ETs in our house all the time. I don't see them. I feel them sometimes, but like my kids are, it's amazing. It's so cool, but they're constantly talking to extraterrestrials in our house. They're like, oh, and they've named them and everything. And they're like, oh, Sambudyan's over there, or Zambarayan. And I'm like, wow. And their crystals are talking to them, and they're on a heightened level beyond me. I'm not seeing ETs and talking to them. I know I'm, in my sleep, I remember stuff when I wake up, but that's different. But they're literally
not doing it. Not yet.
There
not
you go.
Yet.
Yeah. I'm not doing it yet, but they're like at a heightened level. I'm like, wow, I'm just in awe of how, some of the cool stuff that they're doing and stuff. And I help foster that too. I'm homeschooling them. So I know I'm fostering that, but they're blossoming in a way that I'm like, wow, you guys are light years ahead of, your dad and I.
I
But
love hearing that about that generation and those kids coming in with wisdom
yeah,
way beyond their
I
years
know.
from our perspective.
I
No, they
know.
just weren't as handicapped as we're, and you know why they're here,
Hmm.
because they're here to assist when their vibration matches what's about to happen. They're already there. They see
Yeah.
what's coming and they're trying to report it back to us.
Yeah. And I always say, I hope they're learning as much from me as I am from them, because I think I'm learning more from them. But yeah, back to my journey. But that started in 2014, my awakening, and everything changed in my life. I mean, yeah, everything. but but it's been about a decade that I've known that this ascension was actually going to happen. So I've been very aware of this for many years now. And through the different people that I've kind of hooked onto, like channelers that I've learned to trust. And there's one in particular lady, she's a galactic historian and Akashic record reader. And between those people, what I've read in the Golden Taya allotments. Oh, and I did finally finish the document, which, wow, it's a lot to take in. Yeah. And I did finish that, and I've reread over and over different sections, over and over and over. But with that, and then the knowledge I've had leading up to this, and then I did read the handbook too that you have on your website. So much was linking up, and I was hearing a lot of the same things between like some of the channelers and the galactic historian lady that I talked to. And the handbook, I mean, a lot of them are mentioning all the same thing in Golden Taya, and I'm like, wow, like it definitely resonates. Like, this is true. I just, and I could feel it deeply too. I didn't, I wasn't questioning it. I knew. But yeah, and with you too, Lowell, like I was like, he's the real deal. Like this guy is like, I mean, I never questioned. I could just feel it. I instantly could feel it off of you. I just knew, like, this is a guy that everybody needs to listen to. But yeah, but yeah, sorry, I'm getting off track here. Back to getting to Hawaii. I just started having a lot of visions. That's probably where it started. I started getting a lot of downloads. And I kind of presented this idea to my husband, like, hey, why don't we move to Hawaii? But, it wasn't that simple. It's like, I kind of had to break it down, and it took time, but, we eventually, his heart just started opening more, like, I want to do different. I want to be different. It all just synchronized and it came together. I mean, it was literally divine timing with everything. I mean, the way everything lined up and how quick it happened, there were other forces helping, because it just, in a 3D mindset, like it just doesn't happen. Like, it just doesn't happen.
That's
if
my
you were
favorite
to think
part
that way.
of telling your story, is how rapid it happened. And think of the logistics, moving anywhere stateside to Kauai.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you even found a place out there, but you did.
Yeah,
you just did.
well, that whole thing's been tricky, but yes, I mean, it's been a beautiful journey, and we know we're meant to be here. We moved from Southern California. I know you thought I grew up in Missouri, but I didn't move.
I don't know why.
You probably mixed up with somebody else.
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah, we've spent most of our adult life on the West Coast, but we had moved from Orange County. But Donald, he mentioned he's living in Virginia. I'm actually from Virginia. That's where I grew up. Well, I spent my, that's where I grew up, but my adult life was, West Coast. So that's cool. But yeah, in 9 months, we did it. I mean, we let go. We had to release a lot of fears along the way, and we've been doing a lot of inner work for years before that. So I think everything just kind of had come to a climax, and I trusted the downloads. I trusted the visions. I could feel it in my heart. Like, I mean, so many people thought we were crazy. I mean, I think people still do, so especially some family and friends. Like, I mean, it hasn't all been positive, but I think just that some people are just, a lot of people live in fear, and and other emotions that surface that aren't positive that they're displaying. But yeah, we knew we were making the right decision.
I like to tell the story because of how quickly things are going on, how fast things are being lined up. It just seems like it continues to accelerate. I can't even get it out because I just feel like we're so close to this. There are no words.
Can I share something as well?
Please.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you guys off.
No.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah.
Like so much of what you said kind of inspired me to, I guess, go a little more in depth to some stuff that kind of happened to me. I guess like when I was young, I did all kinds of things. I saw spirits that I could speak to. It started off like I could see like animals, and then it kind of graduated to like I saw full blown people, and then like it started out of the corner of my eye, or I would look up in the mirror, I'd see somebody behind me, and I'd look away and they're gone. And then it started like I could see them like just all out in front of me. It's never reached the point where I could actually speak to them, but it's always like they're watching me. And like when I was young, like I could do other things like my mom, because my grandmother who taught her was like into the, I guess, ascended master teaching. So like they would do like barriers and things like that for us, and to make sure that we were okay, and some some experimenting with I guess the violet flame and things like this. I and I was young and I was doing it so intuitively that I thought it was normal, but I guess I had a lot of trauma around sharing my experiences with kids and other people at school, and I kind of like blocked it all out. And it's interesting that you say that the things are happening so rapidly, because it's almost like even though I tried to block it out, I was still on the same path. It was just more, I guess, rooted in the earth instead of like, high. So I got really deep into like conspiracy theories and things like that, and um, and all these signs. Oh, and also, by the way, I'm sorry, my mind is going all over the place. But my grandmother was in contact with like David Icke, and they wrote letters to each other back and forth a lot. He's pretty, I guess, a big. I guess he's one of the more famous people in this field. But he would so. She would like do these like healing things with me and stuff. Is just interesting, and it's interesting that you said like the acceleration, because it seems like in the last 4 to 5 years, like since I felt that like awakening and I felt the love and I felt that presence, like everything that I had been studying and everything that I'd been doing in my life up until that point, just like it just all snapped together and everything made sense. And just like you guys are talking about, even though I've been approaching it from like the material level because I blocked all this stuff out, now everything's rapidly speeding up. And one of the reasons I was led to, I guess, this meeting is because like something was telling me to actually go to Mount Shasta, and actually explore that area for myself. I've been doing a lot of working through my trauma, healing through violet flame meditations, all kinds of things like this. I just recently began fasting so I could and things like this. So it's like I'm trying to tune my body, and then like I was looking into going into Mount Shasta, and then I saw a podcast where somebody had mentioned, you said something in the comment section or something, and about your thing, and then they were talking about your blog, and I was like, even if I went to Mount Shasta, I wouldn't know where to go. And then on your blog, it's got like a little circle where to go to visit. And I was like, oh, well, I guess, this is the kind of synchronicities that I've been looking for.
Buddy, there are no coincidences. You came over that stuff just like I've crossed stuff in my path that I didn't understand how the heck it got there. It's only later down the road, when you look back, now I understand, when I connected the dots, what that meant and how that happened and what lined up where. Because the universe just wants to blow you away. That's all they want to do. They want to give you whatever your intent is. They want to return it in abundance. And right now, because the shift is imminent, they're doing everything they can to get our attention and to transmit information and codes that are supposed to come our way. They're trying to do everything they can with the timeline that we've got. Those of us that now have been talking about the Taya, and we'll talk more about it now because it's going to be public. We're in a position now where we're going to start to express more of it. Enough of you have gone through the material enough so that we can start having conversations about it around in these gatherings in the future. Because as you can see, now when we get it, and everyone needs to know. So we'll trip on the low-hanging fruit first and feed those of us that know we need to get it. We just didn't know about the information. So we're not unintelligent. We're just ignorant about this information. We knew the shift was coming, and we thought I had a pretty good handle on it just reading the Ascension Handbook. Well, here's where I said, again, the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. So we have a much better idea of what's really coming, and we were meant to know. And this, as the challenge for us, is to tune out the people that are going to be, fear-based by the information. And I don't know how to even guard us against that. We'll just be mindful about, the people we let it go to, but the information's public. Why somebody didn't find it on Maia's site before, don't know, but now we know why it has, and I know why it came in my path. I know what I was responsible to do with it. So as of last night, it's been finished. I added some illustrations so it didn't look like pages and pages of text. So that is in place, and we can begin to use it and point people to it because it's free to access. These other sessions that are coming up on Loren's platform, the first one's going to be the day after Christmas, and that'll be a live webinar. So you want to sit and understand the golden tie, come and join us. You can ask your questions live while I take you through the information, show you where you can find resources, because I'm not repeating Maia's work. It's beautiful. Why wouldn't I point people to that? So if you want to hear it, I'll point you in her direction in her YouTube channel, and then I'll send you to where she's graciously allowed us to let me reproduce it on my website. But oh my God, if you're triggered by any of this information and finds it fascinating, the archive that she has on her site is worth dipping into. And there's a lot of it. Oh my God. If we really had access to that when we were educating ourselves before, we would have a whole different perception of how the world spins and what resources we have at our disposal. Yeah. So I want to go back to Lisa and have her expand a little bit more.
All right. Did you have a question?
No, I loved hearing about what's going on. Tell us more, like what your day in the water is now.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, that's my magic place, my happy place. Yeah, I just, I get out there as often as I can. Like I said, I'm homeschooling my kids. So, but it's in a very much an unschooling fashion. So we can we get up and go, we can go a lot in a free way. So, really, head out to the ocean when we want. But, yeah, I do feel a communication with the sea turtles. That's kind of the big, I haven't been around I feel the dolphins, but I have not physically seen one in front of me while I've been in the water. I don't scuba dive. Well, I'd love to learn, but I don't scuba dive. It's snorkeling and just out there swimming is what I'm doing. So I go pretty far out, but I'm still waiting for the dolphins. But there is a communication going on for sure. And as I, in previous recording, I had talked about how I had called them in if it was for the highest good of all. I had called them in that day that I hadn't seen any I hadn't seen any that day at all. And I was in an area where, I've gone and I've seen them, but there's a communication going on, and I am, consciously spreading healing light out there. I'm bringing in different archangels and ascended masters when I'm out there, just putting that light out. But yeah, there's a communication going on, and it's beautiful. But yeah, I do feel called to the water and to spread healing light. And I keep hearing that. I'm not getting out there enough. Apparently they're kind of like getting on me a bit, you're not, I'm like, well, how many days a week am I supposed to get out there? I mean, I would go every day. I don't go every day, but I would love to go every day, but I haven't. Yeah.
My guides put it the same way. It's not like, it's not, they don't put it as though you're not doing enough. They don't put it that way. They keep saying, you need to do more. You need to do more.
Yeah. And they're not saying you're not doing, those are my words. Like I'm feeling like, I need to get out there more, but yeah, they don't put it exactly like that. But yeah, I do feel called to spread healing light in the water. And just even when I'm walking around, I have this kind of active meditation I do with my footsteps are spreading golden light. Like when I'm walking, I tell my kids to do it too. I'm like, let's, plant that golden light, that golden white light, plant that, picture golden footsteps as we're walking on the beach, or, we're out just for a hike, plant that light. And so they're in the habit of doing that too, which is cool.
Wow. That's sweet.
Yeah. But yeah, they picture the roots coming out of their feet, and to ground themselves. And
I love those kids.
But yeah, my daughter, her amethyst, it's a talker. She has both of them. I have a son and a daughter, but they both have tons of crystals on their nightstand. Like they're into crystals just as much as I am. But the amethyst from my daughter, her clear quartz talks a lot too, but her amethyst, wow, she gets a lot of information, and it's just so cool. But she has a little notepad with a pen next to her nightstand. I encourage her to, write down what you get, because a lot happens when she's like getting ready to as she's starting to calm her mind, go to bed. Like a lot comes in then, and then sometimes she wakes up in the middle of the night and she will hear stuff. But she's hearing stuff interdimensionally too. It's like, I think there was a video where Robin Rice was talking about this, where it sounds like someone's in the other room. Like literally there is somebody physically in the room next door or in her room talking. And that happens to my daughter a lot. Like she's constantly hearing other conversations going on. And I've explained to her that you're hearing other dimensions that are right here in the here and now. It's just other dimensions, but that
little
regularly happens.
Is high enough to hear all that stuff that's around her. And, they know those benevolent beings, they know that. So it's comfortable for them to come and communicate, because that's not a gimme. No. Humans still need to be felt out. And now that we have more ideas about ETs that are actually trying to reach out and make contact, that they're still feeling us out, because for a lot of them, we may look like big hairy giants to some of them, and they still need to see that there's no threat with these human beings that we want to come and visit. So that wasn't even anything that had entered my mind until Dave Wallace and I were having that conversation a couple of weeks ago. But your kids have such a pure soul that for them to communicate in that realm and straddle dimensions is so easy for them. They just need to figure out how to negotiate all this. But you put them in an environment where there's not so much negative white noise around them that they just get to blossom.
Yeah. We've noticed that in the past year. They really have blossomed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great to hear.
I did have a question about the Golden Taya allotments, if you can bring
Sure.
that up. Yeah. So I know that, so it was stated that not all the areas will ascend within the same moment, and that the entire process would take approximately 15 days. And I know you had mentioned at one point that you would kind of have a choice between that 15 days, but this is my question, because I had read it differently and I wanted to hear your take on it. I took it that, like, so say for example, in Hawaii, like, knowing that it's a Golden Taya area, like we could be day 3, not day 1, but it's not like you'll know per se, maybe, I don't know, over those 15 days, like have a choice to kind of move or whatnot. Like, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to be day 3 or day 7 or day 1, like I took it that I guess I took it differently, or maybe you took it that way too. I don't know. I just wanted your take on that.
I had read, there's actually another passage later in the document that I had to go back and read because I was so busy rereading the first part, I didn't read all the way to the end, where it gave this linear timeline idea of this wedge of time around the Tayas and their activations is 30 days. The 15 days that they referred to was the opportunity for even the uninitiated to choose to ascend. You can go to these areas later. I could have been oblivious to any of this that's going on. And once ascension hits and realization, becomes part of your awareness, you unaware human that's been, wandering around, that's what's said. There's a 15-day period for you to make your decision. You're still a sovereign being with free will. You can decide to ride, new earth, and you have to rise your vibration to get there, because you can't fake that. If you can accomplish that, then you'll enjoy where we're going. Otherwise, everything else that remains as three-dimensional residue, entropies. It doesn't match the vibration.
There is that 30-day decay pattern that would happen.
Correct.
Yeah. So does that mean that land will be cleansed and reemerge in 30 days and be habitable? That's how I took it.
The entire planet will be. These areas were designed for the actual ascension period. But once she's, through and that we're done through that process, then the entire planet is habitable again. But at a higher vibration, of course.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know it said everybody in the Golden Taya are going to ascend, but not to come off like, well, it seems like some people in the Golden Taya, it's hard to believe that their heart chakra is there to actually ascend to that. You know what I mean? To that. So that's
not,
I find
just
because
they're in the zone does not mean that they automatically go, because your vibration still has to be that's the end job is whatever vessel your soul is occupying, that has got to vibrate at the same as the environment around you. It's not like here our vibration matches the earth, it's just our default. We don't understand the difference, but it's about to make change. For those of us that can dimensionally travel and see things beyond this particular, third density, we already know what that's like. And we know our vibration matches. It's already high. No, we're going to get there. But that doesn't mean that everybody else that might be sitting in Hawaii when this period comes along, their vibration is their own. And that's the determining factor. It's not a collective thing. Oh, no, the very individual. Ascension was twofold. Planetary ascension, personal ascension.
Is there a full list of the ascension lands? Because I know it said that's partial. And, of course, people are probably going to want to know the full list. Because, but that was not a full list, right?
No, not according to that document. But remember, when was that channeled? 1995,
right?
Yes. So there have been refinements. And I know already energetically, I sense some areas that weren't listed in there that, of course, in my mind, there's an area like the central area, Costa Rica. Oh, yeah, where the anchors used to be. I vibrate with that. That makes sense to me because, oh my God, a Atlantis was part of this landmass back then. So that resonated with me.
Mm. And
go ahead, Paula.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, so it's interesting. Because I was reading the Golden Tie allotments, but I'll tell you what, it's a lot of it's over my head. Like I'm trying to understand it. I'm hoping I'm
That's
receiving
why
it
we're all here
vibrationally,
together.
because
And
it's
what wisdom
a lot.
I've been getting has been from something beyond me that's helping us understand it
to
better.
understand it more.
Yes.
So okay, so I haven't read to the end because I keep having to read kind of some of the same stuff over and over. But because of course I'm also reading the Talos book, and a lot of times, and you said that we're going to be more enter inner earth and then also be on the surface, and it's going to be more of a flow back and forth as we please. Everybody, it's just more freedom to flow both spaces. But is there also going to be spaces for people that want to dwell, like how they have Talos is Lemurian, and then they have the Atlantis people, and then they've got Shambhala people, and then some, I think, Asian civilization. They kind of keep their own culture. Do you think that they're going to have like surface people culture areas in Inner Earth?
I got to believe the answer to that is yes. I haven't really given that much thought, but I'm going to now that you mentioned it. And the reason I say that, there's part of me that says in the next dimension, we're all part of one another. So at first you might think that, collectively we're similar in culture, but even Atlantis had 12 colonies and they were all different.
And they're
so
different.
I'm thinking that there are going to be some cultural differences that we probably want to honor and carry through. And each one of them has their own gifts that they bring. I think that's the intent I'm going to hang on to.
Yeah. And the reason I say is that I felt like I did have an intuitive message, right? But I mean, it's definitely a strong voice. And I was brought to this, neighborhood close to where I live here. And it is very nice and pleasant and nice families, And I heard a voice say, okay, so we noticed that people of this area like this sort of environment. So we fashioned it after this style neighborhood. And I said, oh, okay. And of course it has a lot of nature and trees and surrounded with a lot of positive vibes, right? But then I also was thinking of like Dubai, what they do in Dubai, they'll have some areas that are like, oh, English and Americans like to live in green space. So then they develop an area where English and Americans like to live, and that's kind of their little area. And then there's places where people of Indian descent like to live, and they fashion all the houses and the shops to that. And I just wonder, that almost seems like a little inner earth deal, that all these different little cultures and civilizations are set up in Dubai to conform to different civilizations. And then of course they had the big Burj Dubai, or the Burj Khalifa, which was exactly like your picture that you showed, right?
Thanks for sending me that. I went, oh my God, look at that.
That's the Burj Khalifa.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Divinely inspired.
I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I have so many questions.
Well, I think starting next week, we're going to make the point of this is to focus on the Taya and understand it and start to have some questions asked. So whether you've gotten to the end or not, doesn't matter. We can start to, as a group, start to help each other with comprehension here and ask questions, and we can find it by reason. But when I went through it, it's kind of like the Emerald Tablets. I had to read it that many times, and thank God that whatever downloads I got made it possible for me to understand it in a way that I can help others understand it by reason. the thing that Paula and I love is we love evidence. I like to take you there built on reason, and it comes in layers that we all understood along the way. So we need to be effective learners here pretty damn fast, because I know how much attention has been coming my way. It's going to do the same for all of you. I love to see comments made for each one of you in the things that we've done. You're going to have to help carry the load here too, little light workers. So you're going to, develop your people that are going to kick off and spawn with you. Not that the whole tribe doesn't stay together, but we're going to find times and periods where it's suitable for us to all belly up with one another, and we need to like geometrically spawn as quickly as we can. So Phil, you should say something.
How you guys doing?
Good, buddy. How about you?
I'm doing well. You know what was interesting, how you get your content. I do enjoy sitting down and reading. However, I consider myself a fairly slow reader. So I love getting a lot of the information, through audio while I'm driving around going about what I've done. So I listened to the Golden Taya, and like, wow, her information is just like on a different level. But I thought of, Vaneeta and Lisa, if you go into, like I went into, what is it, Blue Star Rising, and she has some more videos, but
Yes.
she talked about, and I'm trying to remember exactly what information that they were passing, but she talked about a section of it was being passed through the dolphins and the whales. And I thought of you, Lisa. I'm just like, wow, okay. And so I kind of sat there and contemplated that a little bit. And then the way that you were being called Vaneeta, in some of her videos, she actually showed a picture of one of the caves, and she talked about your experience. Well, she's like, I don't believe that that's a cave that you can walk into. It's a rock wall, but it is absolutely a portal. You can absolutely go in there. And anyway, like, you're there in Hawaii, and Vaneeta sounds like she's going to be there probably fairly soon, maybe with a pit stop in Sedona, which is cool. Anyway, I just, for the time that I've allocated to it, she's got a lot of really cool information.
Mm-hmm. V, what do you have to add?
So I love the conversation, but I feel like sometimes I come in here low and I come into like a whole other field. Like I just bring in a whole other field. So I am going to say that I am not the best reader. So for me, audio is better, which is why it was better for me to like listen to the videos. So two things. I got a message really, really loudly today from ISIS, and I think it was Thought that came in, and they're like, guys, stop being so freaking serious. Oh my God, please have fun. So I just wanted to bring that back to like, I know this is really important stuff, guys, but please don't forget, like, we chose to come here to do work, but don't forget to also like really enjoy the process and just enjoy every moment. Cause I think we forget that, honestly. Like, even I'm one of those people, I love information. Like, you just cannot give me enough information. I will just soak it all in, right? But it was such a great way to just be like, just stop, just don't forget to do all the little things that just bring you joy, because honestly, when we're in our joy, that's actually when we're connecting the most. That's when we're actually doing the most, instead of when we're like, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Like, when you're sort of like more just allowing, it's almost like the energies are able to work better through you and with you. So I just wanted to bring that back in. And I think one of the things for me, only because I think it was Donald who said this, like when I started my healing journey, like 2 years ago, right around the pandemic, I just dived nose deep into conspiracy theories. Like I knew everything about everything, right? And it's just all up in there. And it was purposeful because it helped me. But I think as I've gone in my journey, I think there's something about being very intentional about where we put our attention, because we are so powerful that we have the power to create timelines. And we all know there's like multiple timelines, and it's all happening at the same time. Technically, there is no past, there's no future. It's all just kind of happening at the same time. And based on our choices, we're jumping those timelines, right? Like every choice we make is putting us on a different timeline. So I think for me, even though I think a lot of the information sounds very accurate with the golden Taya and all of these things, I also feel a little bit of caution towards like what we're creating. So let's just make sure that our energies are synchronized on what we're trying to create before we all jump and put our energies in there. I don't know if that makes sense, but for me, there is something about each one of us are so powerful. Just make sure that there's an intention about what's being said, because yes, this information came in, like you said, 1995. So much has changed, and humanity has made many, many different, choices, and we're in a slightly different place now. So yes, this is a great guideline, but it doesn't have to be exactly what needs to be. Like we can actually create. If we want to shift or change something based on what's there, like we have the capacity to do that. So I just kind of wanted to bring that element back to say that, yes, there's all of this amazing information, but let's not, and I'm not using the right word, let's not give our power away to material that already exists, right? Like, what are we here to create? What do we want to create? And then let's focus our energies on there. So that's what I'm feeling, because I feel like one of the things I'm here to do is like the sort of like, in quotes, new earth co-creators. What do I want to create? And I'm going to put my energies towards that versus all this other stuff that's there. Nothing's wrong with it, but it's like, what do I want to create? So I know I probably threw in a bunch of things in this mix, but that's kind of where
Honey, that was really well put, because the bottom line is that's right. And that's what I was going to say. We already have a vision of what New Earth is going to look like, because it's in our heads. We are already co-creating. And so, yes, it's particularly important to be mindful. With that said, we are in a cosmic cycle, and Earth is going to rise in her consciousness regardless of what humanity does. I resonate totally, and I agree with what you say, that we still get to steer the ship. We're feeding the Akashic records constantly, perpetually. Every time I make another thought, it changes my timeline, and I can't look into the future and do that. That's why we're directed to look back at the moment we're in, select the next one. Just get your mind at ease, put your intent out into the field of probabilities, and what is it that you want? When you start to feed that intent out to the universe and watch her return it in abundance, then you'll see what the real power of you as a co-creator is. And it's amazing.
You want to hear something super crazy? And I don't even know if I want this on a recording, but so I am a late comer to the whole ET thing. I knew ETs existed, but I wasn't putting the two together that we're so interconnected, And when I thought about spirit guides as a medium, as an intuitive, I think of spirit guide as kind of like this wafty thing out somewhere. I don't know where, I wasn't connecting like maybe spirit guides are even ETs, right? Advanced level beings, but I'm more of the manifestation side of spirituality, like keep your vibration high so that you can stay in alignment with the things you want to create. Well, I think I told you that I learned I was cleaning out my car, because I have all my big spiritual moments when I'm doing domestic work for whatever reason. So I was cleaning out my car, and I heard this word really loud, Shambhala. And I think I told you, I didn't know what Shambhala was. I looked it up that night after cleaning out my car. I looked up Shambhala, and it said like the Three Dog Night song. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that song. And then I looked up the meaning of the song, and looked like somebody had an interaction with the psychic, la, la, la. Anyway, as it came down to it, it sounded like it was a utopian society, but it was pretty mythical. It was like a mythical thing in my mind. But whatever I want to create, I'll put this statement. I'm so happy and grateful now that, because like Vaneeta, like you said, we're creating something. And so you have to be a conscious creator. And so I always do it in present tense, even though it hasn't existed yet. So I said, I'm so happy and grateful now that I have guided and been guided to Shambhala, thinking it was like a mythical thing, not like a real thing. You know what I mean? Like it was an idea of what I would like Earth to be. So in June, when I became aware of Talos, I just about fell over. Because I'm like, for a year and a half, I've been writing it out on a piece of paper like that, like they teach you, right? And those, you know, I've been writing, I'm so happy and grateful now that I have guided and been guided to Shambhala. And then I find out about Talos, and then I find out Lowell is been to Talos, and then I find out these books, Talos. And I'm like, oh, Talos is Shambhala. It's like a real place. So, Vaneeta, I think we've been creating it subconsciously, whether we realize it or not. I think it's like in our DNA or something, right?
Well,
how does that happen?
Well, I think we were just like, you know, for me, one of the concepts that was always hard to grasp is that everything actually already exists, right? Everything is already existing in different timelines.
Yeah, always.
Right? We're just kind of bouncing around based on what we're creating. So for me, you know, what I learned recently, because I was very drawn to inner earth, like constantly, and people are like, oh, there's no such thing as Agartha. I'm like, no, I know it exists. I know that it exists. And that I just had someone kind of do a little bit of a soul decode for me. And it showed up that I live, or that's part of my past, future, whatever you want to call it. Agartha is part of that, like Telos is part of that, or Hawaii is part of that. So it's almost sort of like if we could look at all of these things already exist, is just about us aligning to each one of them, right? And it's just a frequency match. It's all about a frequency match. So for me, that's really exciting. For example, I drew out this like incredible community, like spiritual center, healing, growing our own stuff. It's all sustainable and, you know, all of this kind of like my background, right? But it's actually community created and we're completely sustainable off the grid. And I drew that in like August of 2020. And I'd only been like a few months into my journey. I'm like, what the hell is this thing? And then it's kind of what Lisa was saying. It's like, I didn't even know that I was tapping into the Akashic records. And as I'm understanding, that already exists. I'm just making my way to it based on my choices. It's already there. So for me,
like we already know it. And then it comes into our conscious mind at some point, like we must meet some vibration and then something pops and wakes us up or something.
Well, and it's also like, you know, here's the beautiful thing. Like, even though I created that, I'm not locked in. I could have a different vision tomorrow and I could align with that. So I think it's just saying that there's so many choices. There's so many different ways. It's all about like what we want to create and then what choices we're making to kind of align with that. You know what I mean? So I know that that center already exists and it's just I'm making my way to it if I choose that timeline. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it, which to me is very exciting because it's like, oh, wait, it already exists. Okay, that's super cool. So I'm just kind of making my way to it the same way. I'm not in Hawaii right now, but like I always keep this in my background because it tells me I'm there. I'm just making my way to it, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. You're making your way to it. That's exactly right.
So I've heard this thing where like, okay, so you have a thought, right? And when you have that thought, you actually go out and play out that. So it's almost like, I mean, it kind of makes your head spin if you really think about it, because, but I don't know if anybody else has heard this, but yeah, so it's almost like you have all these fractals that go, I mean, go off in different directions. Each thought you have, you go and play that out. And that makes my head spin thinking about that. But I've heard that from several different sources, but it's like, wow. I mean, when you're talking about manifestation and, how your thought, your intentional thought's so important, but it made me think of that. And I don't know if anybody else has heard that, where you go and play out all those different scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have heard of that, and something that came to me during my, I guess, expansion of my awareness, I guess, was that a lot like it's there's almost like a grid of our I don't know if I want to call it grid, but there's almost like a sphere of our collective thoughts as human beings that kind of float around, and even though we don't think we're connected to it, we are in ways, and our cultures and our where we were born, our parents kind of play into the kind of frequencies that we can tune into or that we are privy to when we're younger. And identification with those thoughts would do exactly what you were saying. Kind of like we kind of latch on to these thoughts that are in the ether, or maybe things that we think about ourselves based on those thoughts and things like this, and we end up and I think this is where the idea of manifesting comes from, where you grab onto that thought and you think this is mine. And when you start thinking this is mine, it starts spreading it. You start making that thought a reality, and it kind of connects to what I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, and I don't want to butcher it, but is it Vaneeta?
Yeah, got
You
it.
can just call her V.
Yeah, just call me V.
Okay, V. It kind of goes into what V was talking about, where we create the realities, and it through our thoughts, and I guess the biggest task for us human beings, I guess, especially as we're coming into whatever this consciousness shift is going to look like. I'm not at you guys as I don't know I don't know what it is yet. I just know it's coming. One of the things about that, one of the tasks for, I guess, people in I guess the level of awareness that we're at, is to kind of like be conscious of the thought and select the ones that we want on purpose, instead of kind of like being privy to the whims of all the I guess subconscious thoughts of humanity that is kind of like floating around right now, that can lead to some very destructive kind of realities that you'd create for yourself. I don't know.
Well, that thought that plays out, I've always wondered, is that a parallel life that starts, or is that different when that thought goes and plays out? So do you have, thousands and millions of it's like, it makes your head spin, but all these parallel lives that start playing out, and then think how many cords you have to start cutting. Are you kidding me? No, I need to cut that cord and release that life. Oh my gosh, that makes my head spin.
Yeah, here, let me help you, poor little 3D human. We do not have the capacity to understand any of that yet. We're just barely able to understand that we have the ability to step into higher dimensions. And really, we can control our vibrations. We know that now. We broke it down so we understand how to get our chakras in alignment, how to make them function. And when we do, we realize that sixth sense about ourselves, that ethereal part of ourselves that we feel things with. Now we can step into higher realms, because that's how that interpretation takes place. It's all feeling after this. But man, that's a hard concept for even those of us that were in the know, and we've been triggered by how in the world you explain that to anybody else when you say, oh yeah, I felt it. Yeah, well, I have feelings too, and you know where that drops. But
Yeah, let's not forget. One of the key things for me is, we're multidimensional beings, but we can't grasp so many different concepts, right, all at once. But I do believe that, like you said, Lisa, like every choice creates a different timeline. And it's so funny, as we were talking, what popped into my head, which made me really chuckle, is, so I live in Chicago, and I've had this happen so many times in the past, guys. I can't even tell you the number of people who have told me that they've met me in different places. I'm like, I've never been there. I don't know what you're talking about. Constantly. And right now it's coming to me. It's like, that's part of that multi-dimensional, like I'm getting chills as I'm saying this. I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? Like, what? But that's what's coming in, is that that's what's possible, right? And that was sort of like something that I never understood. I'm like, wait a minute, how many twins do I have? How could all these people be meeting me? I don't know them. Because believe me, if I've met you, like, I won't remember your name, but if I've seen your face, I will find you anywhere. Like, I've literally walked up to strangers and they're like, have I met you? I'm like, yeah, remember, blah, blah, blah. They're like, oh yeah, we did meet. But for me, it's never rung true when they're like, I've met you. I'm like, no, we haven't met before. So anyways, I wanted to throw that in. I don't know if it's ever happened to anybody else, but constantly this would happen to me. And I was always like, what?
Yeah, and a lot of it could be, well, it could be soul family too. I've had that happen to me, and then I start getting memories and downloads of, yeah, it's soul family. And I've been told that, you know, I'll be traveling at some point in the future to the UK, and I'll just be like walking down a street, and I will, like, I've never been there. I mean, I've never even been to Western Europe, but I'll be walking down a street and I'll just know where to go. I'll know where to turn, but then I'll be meeting, I supposedly have a lot of soul family that are in England right now, and that I will be meeting them. And it's just fascinating, but I've had that, you know, recently happen too, which you were saying with your experience, and the feeling I keep getting is soul family. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this was way before I was on my journey, so I had no concept. All I was thinking is like, how are all these people like seeing me? Like, how many twins do I have in the city to be having this experience so often? What you're sharing does make sense. For me, that feels, now that I'm aware, there is that energetic frequency. I mean, look at how we've all come together, right? Like, I mean, Lowell's the common denominator, but I had a very similar story. It's like, I didn't watch this show and I saw him on there. I'm like, oh, I remember these guys. I don't watch this show. And he said, tell us. And I was like already tuned in, because I feel very sort of like, I feel like I have a parallel lifetime there. And so then I followed the chase and found him in like a day. I was already in like a Zoom call. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be here.
Well, you know, when you mentioned your examples, it made me wonder, there's another alternative that you may have been aware enough to have been, you know, traveling to other dimensions, and that's where you may have run into them. That's certainly an option, not just, you know, one of your fractals snapping off and walking down another timeline.
It's possible. I guess at that point, I didn't even think to have any thoughts other than, isn't this strange? And I would talk to other people like, yeah, that's never happened to me. So then I would tell people, I'm like, oh yeah, I just have a really common face. I'm that person that looks like everybody else. I literally used to say that to people because I didn't know how to respond to them, because they're like, no, I've met you. I'm like, you know, I have that common face, that common Indian face. Maybe you've seen me. I didn't know what else to say.
I'm not sure that saying y'all look alike really resonates, right?
Well, I mean, I'm just going to be honest. Like, I have experienced a lot of that, and not in any bad way. I think it's just sometimes it's a cultural thing. I think when you're not around certain groups of people, it's harder to distinguish features and the looks. So I've learned over time that I'm so much more open and compassionate to people about things, because everybody has a certain level of generalizations about different cultures that they're not that familiar with. So I had to learn a lot of grace over the years when people would come and say things to me. And my first instinct would be like, did you really just ask me that? Like, you didn't just ask me that. To then go to a place of, okay, Vaneeta, here's a moment to offer some information. It's because they don't know. All they know is what comes to them through media. And, you know, through media, what's the information going to be? So here's your opportunity to offer something. And so then I really switched into that space of being much more compassionate and understanding and explaining certain things especially when it comes to my culture.
Well, that didn't come without being part of you to begin with. So you were just going to begin to be authentic, and then your light was going to shine on them. Hopefully they were paying attention.
Yeah. And you're going to love this. It's funny. My former husband, when we were dating and going to the University of Minnesota, he's from Texas. So we moved, I met him in Texas, and then he came up to Minnesota where I was going to school. And well, you know, Lowell, you can confirm this, is a lot of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people in Minnesota, and he was not used to that. So, and then, you know, University of Minnesota has 50,000 people, probably about, at that point, maybe 80% were blonde-haired, blue-eyed. He said, because I spent all day thinking it was you, calling your name, and this person would turn around and be like, oh, that's not her. He goes, all y'all people in Minnesota look alike.
You know, I heard a joke like that once. We were driving to the university and someone says, oh, you live here? And I go, no, these are my 45,000 brothers and sisters.
Yeah, so I can understand. I can strangely relate. Yeah.
Well, I'm ready to call it a day. Anybody got any closing remarks that they want to share before we call this a day?
Just have fun, everybody. Don't forget to enjoy every moment.
Okay. Then before I wrap, the topic that we're going to cover in the last few of these that I've scheduled through the end of the year, we're going to talk about refining our knowledge of the golden tie and get a little better familiar with it. Because if what is contained in it is accurate, we need to pay attention to it and help others get in line with it. And it resonates with me, and I'm sure it does with the rest of you. So I will leave it at that and look forward to seeing you again. Okay. Let's stop the recording